Adana had always been more than just a big sister to Abu. She was his protector, his caretaker, and in many ways, the only parent he had ever known. After their parents passed away, she took on the role of raising him, sacrificing her own comfort and youth to ensure he was fed, clothed, and educated. Even after she got married and moved into her husband's home, her concern for Abu never faded. Every morning without fail, she'd visit his house with food, asking him how he slept, if he had eaten, or if he needed anything. She still saw him as the little boy she had once cradled, and she found it hard to let go of that image. Though her intentions were rooted in love, Adana had unknowingly become controlling. She believed she knew what was best for Abu in all areas of life, including his future marriage. In her eyes, no woman would ever be good enough for her baby brother, and she had already made up her mind to choose his wife for him, whether he liked it or not. When Adana finally brought up the idea of marriage, it wasn't really a conversation, it was a declaration. She told Abu that she wouldn't be around to take care of him forever, and it was time he got married to a good woman, but by good, she didn't mean someone who loved and understood him. She meant someone who met her standards, who would follow her lead, and never challenge her role as the authority in Abu's life. Abu, though surprised, admitted he had also been thinking about settling down. However, he wanted to choose his wife himself, someone he truly connected with. But Adana wouldn't hear of it. She laughed off his protest, calling him Bobo, a nickname from childhood that made him feel like a hopeless boy rather than a grown man. "What do you know about women?" she teased. "Let me pick for you. I know what's best." Abu didn't argue further. Even though he was now a man with a small business and his own home, Adana's words still carried the weight of the older sister who had raised him. He felt hopeless, almost like a child again, unsure of how to claim ownership of his own choices. This dynamic wasn't new. It had been built over years of dependence and gratitude. Adana had done so much for him that Abu felt guilty standing up to her. But what she failed to realize was that her love, though deep and genuine, had turned possessive. Her inability to separate her identity from her brother's life created tension that Abu didn't know how to handle. She believed she was doing the right thing, shielding him from heartbreak, failure, and women she deemed unworthy. But in doing so, she denied him the very right to grow up, make mistakes, and build a life on his own terms. The emotional grip she held on him wasn't just about tradition or protection, it was about control. And while Abu didn't yet have the courage to fully push back, the seeds of frustration were already planted. Adana's love, once nurturing and selfless, had slowly morphed into something suffocating, and it would only be a matter of time before the tension between them reached its breaking point. Abu wasn't trying to disrespect his sister when he fell for Damai. In fact, when he first met her, marriage wasn't even on his mind. She had come into his pharmacy one sunny afternoon looking for some painkillers, and something about her soft voice, her gentle smile just stayed with him. He found himself thinking about her more than he expected, and when fate brought her across his path again, he couldn't help but speak up. It was bold, maybe even too forward, but he told her how he felt and asked for a chance. Damai was hesitant. She questioned his intentions, unsure how a man who barely knew her could talk about marriage so soon, but there was something honest in his eyes, something that made her want to trust him. So slowly they began to talk more, meet often, and truly get to know each other. Before long, Abu knew this was the woman he wanted to build a life with. She wasn't flashy or loud, she was kind, down to earth, and had a good heart. For Abu, that was enough. Introducing Damai to Adana, however, changed everything. He had hoped his sister would be happy for him, or at least give the relationship a chance. But the moment Adana saw Damai, her face froze. She didn't smile, didn't ask polite questions, didn't even hide her disapproval. That same evening, she stormed over to Abu's house, furious. "How dare you bring that girl to me?" she yelled. "After everything I've done for you, you go behind my back and choose a woman without my consent?" Abu tried to reason with her. He reminded her he was a grown man, capable of making decisions for his own life, but Adana wouldn't hear any of it. She mocked him, reminding him of how she used to bathe him, feed him, and call him Bobo like he was still a toddler. "You think you know what you're doing?" she scoffed. "I will find the right woman for you." This one is not it. The next day, without warning, she showed up with a timid young woman named Inkiru, claiming she was the perfect wife for Abu. But when Abu saw her, he couldn't hold back. "Sister, I'm not a child," he said firmly. "I already have someone I love. Take her back." It was the first time he openly rejected his sister, and the air between them shifted. Despite Adana's constant interference, Abu stood by Damai. The more his sister pressured him, the more convinced he became that he needed to live life on his own terms. Damai, though worried about not being accepted, stayed by his side because she saw how deeply he loved her. She even went to Adana herself, begging for understanding, pleading for her blessing, but Adana flatly refused. "I don't want you. I've chosen someone else for my brother, and he must marry her," she said coldly. But that didn't stop them. Abu went behind his sister's back and married Damai. To marry Dummy. It wasn't a grand wedding, and many family members were missing, but to them, it was perfect. It was a decision rooted in love, not obligation. Abu had finally drawn a line, choosing his future over his past, even if it meant losing the approval of the person who had raised him. And though part of him still hoped Adana would come around, he knew deep down that sometimes love means stepping out from someone's shadow, even if that someone is your own sister. At first, Dambai tried to keep an open heart. She knew Adana didn't approve of her, but she believed that time, patience, and love would eventually win her over. After all, she wasn't trying to steal Abu away from his sister, she just wanted a peaceful life with her husband. But soon after their marriage, it became painfully clear that Adana had no intention of letting them build that life. She began showing up at their home unannounced, staying for days without invitation. She claimed she just wanted to help them settle in, but everything she did was carefully calculated. She inserted herself into every household matter: what they ate, how the money was spent, even how Dummy cleaned the house. At first, Damai stayed quiet, trying not to make waves, but the more Adana embedded herself into their lives, the more suffocating things became. It didn't feel like a marriage, it felt like a prison where she was constantly being watched and judged. Abu, unfortunately, didn't see any of it, or maybe he chose not to. He still saw his sister through the eyes of a grateful younger brother. When Adana cooked for them or gave unsolicited advice, he smiled and thanked her, completely missing how it made his wife feel small and unwanted. One day, when Damai was preparing yam porridge Abu's request, Adana barged into the kitchen, kicked the yam away, and insisted she was going to make oasis instead. "Your mother clearly didn't teach you how to cook real meals," she snapped. When Damai protested gently, reminding her that Abu had specifically asked for yam, Adana slapped her across the face without hesitation. "Don't forget who was here first," she warned. Abu returned home later to find the food ready and his sister all smiles, claiming Damai hadn't been feeling well, so she had stepped in to help. When Damai tried to explain the truth, Abu dismissed her concerns. "My sister would never hit you," he said. "And if she did, you must have done something to provoke her." That moment broke something in Damai. The man who had once defied his family to marry her was now too weak to stand up for her when it mattered most. From that on, Adana took over the kitchen completely, claiming she knew Abu's taste better than anyone. She began asking Abu for money to manage the home, insisting Damai wasn't capable of handling things properly. When she wasn't there, she would leave Damai with barely enough money to cook a decent meal. Then she'd return and accuse her of mismanaging funds or being lazy. Slowly, Abu began to believe the narrative. "Why can't you cook like sister?" he'd ask, frustration creeping into his voice. No matter how much Damai tried to explain, Abu wouldn't listen. His faith in her had started to crumble, poisoned by his sister's manipulations. Damai felt completely alone, married, but without a partner. She no longer recognized the man she had once believed would protect her. He was there physically, but emotionally, he was gone, buried under his sister's shadow. The house no longer felt like a home. It felt like a battlefield, and Damai was the only one fighting. Yet, despite the pain, a quiet resolve began to form in her heart. If no one else would fight for her dignity, she would. And when the time came, she would make sure her silence had not been in vain. Weeks passed, and despite the emotional weight of living under Adana's roof, Damai remained in the marriage, trying to hold on to whatever peace she could find. But she began to feel physically different, tired, nauseous, emotional. One morning, she threw up behind the house, and Adana, always watching, caught her in the act. "So you're pregnant," she spat with venom. "Not joy, I knew it. You've been sleeping around, haven't you?" The words struck Damai like ice. For a second, she couldn't even respond. She blinked, stunned that what should have been good news, joyful, even was now being twisted into something ugly. "Sister, what are you talking about? I'm carrying your brother's child," Damai said softly, still hoping for a shred of empathy. But Adana was relentless. "Don't lie. When was the last time my brother touched you? Do you think I don't know? I made sure he kept his distance from you." And with that, the full weight of the manipulation hit Damai. Her own husband had been convinced not to be intimate with her, all because his sister had planted seeds of doubt in his mind. Her head spun with rage and disbelief. Later that night, Abu returned home to find Adana already playing her part. "Your wife is pregnant," she said in a mocking tone. "But ask yourself, when was the last time you even touched her?" Abu's face fell. Confusion took over as he tried to piece things together. When he finally approached Damai, instead of sharing in the happiness of the news, he interrogated her like she was a criminal. "Who's the father?" he asked. "Tell me the truth, Damai." She looked at him, this man she had chosen over her own dignity, this man she had stayed with even when his sister made life unbearable, and her heart cracked wide open. "So you believe I would cheat on you?" she said through angry tears. "You've let your sister control you so much that you can't even see what's right in front of you. You think I planned this? That I would trap myself in a toxic home just to have a child with another man?" She didn't wait for his response. Her voice shook with conviction now. "If this marriage was ever real, it ended the day you stopped standing by me." The next morning, Damai had already packed her bags. She was done playing house in a place where she was constantly humiliated and disrespected. When Abu and Adana confronted her again, she didn't argue. She simply told them they would regret everything they had done to her. "You," she said, pointing at Adana, "think you've won, don't you? That you've finally gotten rid of me. But let me tell you, one day you'll realize you lost something far more valuable than your petty pride." And to Abu, she added, "You let someone else think for you, speak for you, and ruin your marriage. I used to think you are a man, but now all I see is your sister's little puppet." With those final words, she walked out not defeated, but stronger. This wasn't a retreat, it was a quiet declaration of war. She would heal, she would rise, and when the truth came full circle, she would be the one standing. They had underestimated her, but she knew life had a way of turning tables. All she had to do now was wait. When Damai walked away from her marriage to Abu, she thought she was closing the most painful chapter of her life. She had no intention of looking back, no desire for revenge. She just wanted peace, somewhere to breathe, to think, and to protect the life growing inside her. What she didn't expect was to find compassion in the most unlikely place, Adana's own husband. He had heard of the tension in his home, of how Adana had abandoned their marriage to wage war against her brother's wife. So when Damai came to his house seeking clarity and perhaps an ounce of guidance, he listened. She told him everything, not to gossip or stir trouble, but because she simply had no one else to turn to. In her voice, he heard pain that mirrored his own. Adana had left him alone for months, more preoccupied with controlling her brother's home than preserving her own. The more time he spent around Damai, the more he realized how deeply they had both been neglected, misunderstood, and cast aside by the same woman. What started as long conversations soon grew into a quiet companionship. Damai wasn't looking for love, she was just trying to survive, but there was something gentle about this man that made her feel safe for the first time in months. And for him, Damai brought a sense of calm and understanding he hadn't felt in his marriage for years. Their connection deepened slowly and naturally, without guilt or pretense. When he learned she was pregnant, it didn't scare him. In fact, it only solidified what he already felt in his heart. He wanted to be with her not just as a partner, but as a father to her child. Meanwhile, Adana, feeling victorious for having driven Damai away, returned home to reclaim her marriage. She walked in with confidence, ready to pick up where she left off. But when she saw Damai in the kitchen of her own home cooking breakfast, smiling, her world shattered. "What is she doing here?" Adana demanded. Before she could even process it, Damai turned, calm and poised, and replied, "This is my husband's house now. You left it for too long." At first, Adana thought it was a joke, but then her husband confirmed it with a cold honesty that cut deep. "Yes, she's my wife now," he said, "and she's carrying my child." Adana's face drained of color. She tried to argue, scream, plead, but it was too late. He reminded her that she had walked away, abandoned him, and focused all her energy on a battle that never needed to exist. "You pushed her into my life," he said bluntly, "and for that, I'm grateful." Adana left in shock, heart pounding with disbelief. She raced to Abu's shop, dragging him back to witness the scene, still convinced it was all a lie. But when they arrived, they found Damai laughing softly as her new husband gently fed her fruit. Abu couldn't believe what he saw. He lashed out in anger, accusing Damai of seduction and betrayal, but she didn't flinch. "Your sister never wanted peace, and you were never man enough to stop her," she said firmly. "Now I've found someone who sees me, values me, and protects me. I'm done being your pawn." With that, she turned her back to them both free, at last. In the days that followed their confrontation at Adana's former home, both she and Abu returned to a house that now felt cold, silent, and unfamiliar. The once proud sister who had fought tooth and nail to control her brother's life now found herself alone, abandoned not only by her husband, but also by the very person she believed she was protecting. Abu, too, was a shell of the man he once thought he was. The realization that he had let his sister dictate every step of his adult life hit him harder than he expected. He looked around their quiet compound and saw nothing but broken pieces of a marriage, of a family, and of his own dignity. The two of them, so tied together by blood and years of shared history, now sat on opposite ends of the same emptiness, quietly blaming one another for how far things had gone. Abu couldn't help but snap under the pressure. He yelled at Adana, accusing her of being a parasite in his life. "You never let me grow," he shouted. "You wanted me to stay your little boy forever. And now look where that's gotten us." But Adana fired back with equal venom, blaming him for being weak and letting that woman steal her husband. "You married the wrong girl," she screamed. "If you had just listened to me, none of this would have happened." The house echoed with their pain and regret. two people locked in a cycle of hurt, both unwilling to see how their own choices had led them here. But deep down, they both knew the truth. This wasn't about Damai. This wasn't even about love. It was about control, ego, and the inability to let go of the past. Abu finally understood that growing up wasn't just about age, it was about learning when to draw the line, even with the people you love most. Meanwhile, far from the noise and chaos, Dambai had started over. She and Idana's ex-husband eventually moved to the city, determined to leave behind the village that had been the backdrop of so much pain. Their child was born healthy, and for the first time in a long while, Damai felt like she could breathe again. She had found peace not because life had gone exactly as she planned, but because she had chosen herself when no one else would. Her story, though messy and complicated, held a quiet kind of victory. And for those who watched from the sidelines, there was a powerful lesson buried in it all. Sometimes the people who say they love you the most can also be the ones holding you back. Love doesn't mean ownership, family doesn't mean control, and being an older sibling, a parent, or a spouse doesn't give anyone the right to dictate another person's happiness. In the end, the story of Idana, Abu, and Dambai isn't just a tale of betrayal or revenge, it's a cautionary reminder that if we don't allow the people we love to grow, to make their own choices, and even their own mistakes, we risk losing them entirely. Sometimes letting go is the purest form of love.